So the proper introduction to behavioral finance is to remind you that it is a cross between psychology and finance. This is not traditional finance. This is a new offshoot, or new section of finance where we try to get into the minds of the people making financial decisions. So we need to remind ourselves a little bit about traditional finance. So traditional finance, academic traditional finance, it assumes that behaviors of investors are rational. The investor will make the right decision mathematically. And of course, most people do not know the mathematics of finance, so assuming that is somewhat suspect. And additionally, that people don't always behave rationally because, as I like to say, people are fickle. We are a little fickle. We do things for emotional reasons. We have all kinds of things that involve our attitudes, our behaviors, and so on. So we're not completely rational. But traditional finance assumes that we have sound reasoning, that we completely exploit all the information that's available to us, that we don't shortcut things, that we actually do the analysis, and that people are unbiased about their predictions of the future. In other words, we're actually calculating scientifically. In other words, we're like Mr. Spock from Star Trek. We're very logical and rational. We're not emotional. Well, quite frankly, there's no one that's like Mr. Spock except Mr. Spock. We're much more like Captain Kirk than we are anything else. In addition to that, it's how investors look or behave with regard to groups. In groups, we're supposed to also be rational, and as evidence will show in this course, in groups, there's all kinds of things that get involved and can go wrong because we tend to move as animals in a herd rather than thinking independently and analytically. Now, behavioral finance is more about the emotions and the bias that are natural in our way of thinking. We believe that fear and greed are natural emotions and that they drive our behavior in a lot of cases. Therefore, it's natural to apply other than the rational, mathematical, logical thoughts to decisions as traditional finance would. Traditional finance will give you a net present value. It will give you an IRR. It never asks you how you feel about that. It never asks you, are you mad at someone? Are you trying to take advantage of someone because you're greedy? It never gets into that. It's simply 2 plus 2 equals 4, or in this case, the net present value is positive. IRR is above your discounted cash flow discount rate. So behavioral finance looks at the psychology of financial decision making. It looks at us as human beings and people that have non-rational tendencies. Now, even the smartest people can be affected by psychological bias. This is no new thing to the top hedge fund managers, which study the psychology of their traders quite often. And if you talk to or listen to the reports on television or read the books of the top fund managers or the top hedge fund managers or traders, that there is a lot of psychological influence in the markets, and that they try to avoid their own psychological biases as well as understanding the biases of other people. In fact, we're going to use this as a help in our decision making, not a hindrance. Our mood, our anticipated feelings and bias, or our anticipated feelings will bias our decisions, and we need to account for that. We aren't computers, and we don't act in ways that are totally predictable. In fact, our decision making is affected by our emotions and our outcome. The effect occurs after an outcome, and so what we're trying to do is decide how best to ask our questions to see if we are emotionally impacted by external events, or is our thinking illogical in some way. Another couple of other words that you need to think about is the word heuristics. And what heuristics simply means is a rule of thumb or a mental shortcut. So there's vernacular in behavioral finance and psychology, as well as many of the other things in many other studies. So in this case, we need to learn the word heuristics. It's coming up quite a bit, and it simply means a rule of thumb. And these shortcuts, these mental shortcuts, these heuristics really get us in trouble because we haven't done our homework, and it's much easier to, say, follow the crowd than it is to do all the analysis. So when we think about heuristics and these types of things, what we want to do is find out what mental shortcuts can get us ahead and which ones can get us behind and get us in trouble. So that's what this course tries to show us to do, is stay out of trouble and make good decisions. And we have to account for not just the net present value and the IRR of an investment or a decision based on the numbers in a budget. We have to know what our psychological makeup that's impacting our decisions will be, and therefore we can make better decisions. So week after week, theory after theory, item after item, what we're building is a lattice work of theories so we can make better decisions based on not only the numbers, which you've seen in every other class, but our emotions and our psychological biases during our decision making. So it should be a fun class. I think this will be your favorite class when you get done with the program because it's so personal. It's so much about you making good decisions. And of course, no matter where you go after this class or after this program, you will absolutely be making decisions. And so this will help you in all kinds of ways. Okay, so there's an introduction on behavior and traditional finance. Let's keep going.